think every household already has a hidden system around food. Most people just don't realize it exists. There's a pattern to how groceries enter the house, how meals get decided, how leftovers disappear into containers at the back of the fridge. There's already a workflow happening. It's just invisible because nobody ever consciously designed it. And I think that matters because invisible systems are very hard to improve. At work, we understand this immediately. If a workflow is unclear, people duplicate steps. Things get forgotten. Tasks fall through the cracks because everybody assumed somebody else has already handled it. And eventually somebody has to sit down and ask, wait, what are we actually doing here? I honestly think many homes work exactly like that around food. Not because people are lazy, not because they don't care, but because everybody is running on invisible habits and assumptions without ever stepping back to look at the bigger picture. And honestly, I think a lot of our leftovers quietly represent our fantasy self, the version of us that was definitely going to eat that quinoa tomorrow, the version that meal preps, the version that has endless energy on Thursday evenings. And then suddenly it's 2 weeks later and the container has entered a stage of life where it can no longer be identified scientifically. Once you start paying attention, you realize there's an entire workflow happening around food every single day. Shopping, remembering what's already at home, planning meals, cooking, managing leftovers, running out of ingredients, making emergency decisions when everybody is hungry and tired. And most people are doing all of that almost completely unconsciously. Not intentional autopilot, reactive autopilot. And I think that's where a lot of the stress comes from, because invisible systems are very hard to redesign. If you're not aware of the pattern, you can't really change the pattern. You just keep repeating it. And I honestly think many people are running incredibly complicated food workflows without realizing it. Too many decisions, too many one-off ingredients, too much improvising, too much dependence on motivation and energy. Individually, those things don't seem dramatic, but together they create a constant mental friction. And because it happens gradually, people often assume this is just what cooking feels like. But I really don't think it has to feel that hard. And I think this is also why copying somebody else's food system blindly often fails. Because people are different, brains are different. For example, I have a weirdly detailed mental map of what food we already have at home. I can practically visualize the pantry shelves in my head. My husband absolutely cannot. And that's not bad. It just means we need different kinds of support from a system. Because if he goes shopping, there's a very real chance we end up with 4 jars of peanut butter while somehow forgetting the one thing we actually needed. And honestly, I think this is important because many people quietly blame themselves for things that are actually systems mismatches. Some people thrive with detailed planning. Some people feel trapped by it immediately. Some people need visual reminders. Some people need fewer choices. Some need repetition to reduce mental load. That doesn't mean somebody is bad at cooking or organizing. It just means the system has to fit the brain using it. And I think this is especially important for neurodivergent people because food systems that rely heavily on memory, constant decision-making, and perfect planning can become exhausting very quickly. And honestly, I think the first step is simply becoming aware of where the friction actually happens. Not judging yourself, just observing. Where does food become stressful? Is it shopping? Remembering what you already have? Deciding what to cook? Cooking after work? running out of ideas, feeling like meals are too complicated, feeling overwhelmed by the state of the kitchen? Because once you identify the recurring stress points, you can start asking a completely different question. Not how do I become more disciplined, but how do I make this easier forever? And I love that question because it completely changes the energy around food. Instead of forcing yourself harder, you start redesigning the workflow, reducing unnecessary decisions, reducing friction, creating support systems. That's what good systems do. And honestly, I think most people already know where the stress points are. They just haven't slowed down enough to consciously look at them yet. For example, maybe deciding what to cook every evening drains you. Okay, maybe the solution is not be more creative. Maybe the solution is reducing the number of decisions, default meals, theme nights, fallback dinners. Simple meal structures you can repeat without thinking so hard every single day. Or maybe shopping feels chaotic. Maybe the solution is simplifying what enters the house in the first place. Buying ingredients that work across multiple meals, reducing one-off ingredients, keeping more reliable staples around. And honestly, I think everybody should have a very short list of meals they genuinely enjoy that can be mostly made from pantry, freezer, or long-lasting ingredients. Not sad emergency food. Real meals you actually like. Because life does get chaotic sometimes. People get sick, schedules change, shopping doesn't happen, and having a few meals that can quietly carry you through difficult weeks removes an incredible amount of stress. And then there's the kitchen itself. I honestly think our kitchens should feel more like highways and less like obstacle courses, because life already moves fast. And if your kitchen workflow constantly forces you to search for tools, move clutter around, open overcrowded drawers, and make extra decisions, that friction adds up mentally very quickly. I actually have a very minimal kitchen setup myself, and it helps me enormously because everything is easy to access and easy to maintain. And I think this is one of those hidden things people underestimate. Your environment either supports your life or quietly drains energy from it. I work in the medical field where everything has to be extremely structured and organized. We deal with workflows and documentation and accreditation and data systems all the time. And I'm slightly known among my colleagues as the person with a metaphorical red pencil constantly asking, do we actually need this step? Because once you can finally see the invisible system, you can start redesigning it intentionally. And honestly, I think most people already know where the friction is. They already know which routines create stress, which decisions keep draining them, which parts of food feel heavier than they need to. Sometimes we just need to slow down long enough to actually see the pattern. Because once you can see the system, you can start changing it. Usually not through huge dramatic changes, but through small adjustments that remove recurring friction over and over again. And those small changes can completely transform everyday life over time. Not through perfection, not through discipline, but through awareness and better structure. And honestly, I really believe you already have a lot of the answers. You probably just need to dig a little deeper and start looking at the system itself. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.